Hey guys, Dr. Snellgrove here, recording a quick video for our Essay 2 intro for our 8-week Composition 1 class. Please cross your fingers. I tried to record this video yesterday and Zoom betrayed me. All right. So the good news, I always say it's good news. I don't know if any students think it's as good news as I think it is, but the basic blueprint for how you do different parts of your essay doesn't change from essay to essay. So all of the stuff that we talked about in the Essay 1 intro video is still required. We still need a title that makes the reader curious. We still need a hook that really gets the reader attention. We still need relevant background info, and we still need a specific thesis. So for the truly, basics of it, I would recommend that you rewatch that first video if you need to. So this video, fingers crossed, will be a tad shorter at least, but this video is more about, okay, how can we apply the principles of that blueprint to the specific nature of your second essay? All right, so for example, with the title, one of the things we talked about before is the title needs to be something that, somehow makes the reader look twice. I've been teaching a long time. I used to say a title should be like a newspaper headline that makes you turn your head. Nowadays, I mention that, students are like, what's a newspaper? So I'm like, okay, imagine the dozens, if not hundreds of things you could click on every day in your social media feeds, and yet you only click on a handful of them. What makes you click on them? Usually they sound interesting. Maybe they sound funny. Maybe they sound scary. Maybe they sound, surprising. So just channeling some of that. Now, the good news is that the nature of your essay kind of lends itself to a bit of this. So for example, one of the things I talked about before, and I'm still a big proponent of, is how to put this. Basically, it's good to be a bit mysterious early on. So you're writing about, the audience, for these commercials that you're analyzing, but the title doesn't have to reference the company. It doesn't have to reference the specific commercials. It doesn't have to reference the audience. It's not that you can't, but I'm just saying you don't have to. And that gives you, in some cases, a little more creative freedom. So as an example here, let's say that I want to write I have a title like modern mind control or something like that, mysterious modern mind control. And so there's a couple things going on there, right? I'm deliberately not saying anything about commercials or advertising or anything like that. Instead, I'm going off the trope of, oh yeah, this is basically the closest thing we have to modern mind control. But the title is also vague enough, mysterious enough that it might make a reader say, wait, what? What are they talking about? I guess I'll check it out. I guess I'll start reading it. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And, it's not that you can't mention the company name or the audience or anything, but you don't have to. And in many cases, being a bit mysterious gives you an excuse to come up with a title that is a bit more mysterious, a bit more, intriguing, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, hooks obviously are close cousins to the title. And so some of the same rules apply. What we were just talking about, the hook doesn't have to mention commercials. It doesn't have to mention advertising, marketing. It doesn't have to mention the company or the audience. So instead, you can focus on what is a good first line or lines that would keep my reader reading. Because we talked about this on the first video, right? Like, you can have a great title. We've all had that moment where you click on something because it sounds cool and then just boring as hell. It's like, oh, I'm backing out. I'm hitting that back button, baby. So you want to have that first line where it's like, okay, I'm interested. I want to keep things going. All right. So there's more than two. There's two ways I usually recommend creating a good hook for writers. So my own personal preference, as in this is literally what I do for the 8 billion freelance articles that I write. I'm a big believer in a rhetorical question, starting with a rhetorical question that has the second person you or your in it. All right. And the reason I do this is I like to ask these questions because, one, it's human nature. People want to get answers to questions. So if you start with a question, people want to read it to get the answer. And two, if you have, you or your in there, it makes it clear to the reader that they are involved in this somehow. They have some skin in this particular game. So for instance, if I was coming up with a hook for this essay, I might have something like, what if you were being mind controlled every day and you didn't even know it? So two things are going on there. Again, I'm deliberately being mysterious. I'm not mentioning marketing or anything commercials at this point. I'm instead going with the much more fantastic sounding, scary sounding. What if you're being mind controlled? And of course, what if you were being mind controlled every day and you didn't even know it? So ideally, my readers will, what the hell? What's happening to me? I guess I got to keep reading. I guess I got to keep reading to find this out. Now, the other thing that you can do that I often recommend, and it's the same thing that you saw back in our sample essay that we looked at for essay 1, where the person wrote the article about wrote the essay about does texting affect writing? And she knew damn well that these aren't the most exciting topics in the world, so she jazzed it up a little bit. She asked the beginning of that essay, it's taking over our lives. We can do it almost anywhere. So she did the same thing. She made it sound very kind of scary and dramatic, and above all, mysterious. So the whole time, even as she's getting the reader's attention, the reader's trying to figure out what the hell she's talking about. That's not a coincidence. All right. So how could you do that with this essay? So instead of having the zippy rhetorical question, you could have a hypothetical scenario you're laying out for a reader. Like, imagine every day you come home to a box waiting for you. Inside that box is a world of entertainment, but it's also a world of media manipulation and mind control. No, we're not talking about some sci-fi futuristic invention. We're talking about the television set, and it's been manipulating minds for generations. Something like that. Where, again, the first part, it's meant to be scary, mysterious, dramatic, builds up to what we're actually talking about. And then, of course, that itself is a perfect segue to the next section, background info. So just like with essay 1, you got to have relevant background info. So it's like, what does relevant background info look like in this case? So at bare minimum, you can, at bare minimum, get text left and right. So at bare minimum, of course, you need to introduce us to the company, that you're going to be analyzing. So if you're analyzing, Coca-Cola, you need to introduce Coca-Cola. Now, this doesn't have to be a super long thing. I've had students before, especially with Coca-Cola, where all of a sudden they're giving me like the 150-year history of the company. I'm like, oh my God, we do not need that in an intro. Right, we could get by with 2 or 3 sentences. If you want to bring in more to kind of flesh your intro out, and that's fine, but just make sure it's relevant stuff. What does the reader really need to know? Someone in the year of our Lord, 21st century. I'm trying to keep these videos evergreen, so I was like, wait, maybe I shouldn't put a year on it. Maybe it should be like the old Mega Man games, 20XX. I should be dead by the time we're past that, right? But anyways. With that, it's like you don't need to, the modern, because you're writing this, default audience is modern college freshmen, right? So they don't need to know like every single thing that happened to the company. It's just like, who is the company? Is there anything significant or notable about them? Speaking of significant or notable, this is a little less common with this kind of essay than with your first essay, but this is another one where, yeah, you can get us you can introduce us to special terms, acronyms, definitions, technical terms, scientific terms, even marketing terms. This would be an ideal, place for you to introduce us to it. And I've been telling a lot of my face-to-face students this, even ones that are further along than you guys. And the reason for this that sometimes people struggle with, it's like, well, I have, all this background info, or all this information about the company I need to get into, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, that's fine, but you need to get into that in the intro. That's the whole point, is you're front loading the reader with all of this info, so they don't instead have to, maybe I should say, you don't have to suddenly like hit the brakes when you're making good arguments later on. Oh, by the way, back in 18, why do we need that? If it's really that important, put it in the intro. If it's not really that important, don't put it in at all. All right. Now, the other thing you can put in the background section, I say can, like it's literally optional, aka I will not count off points if you're not doing this. It's truly, truly optional. but you can use this as an opportunity to talk a bit more about your demographic. Because I gave the game away a minute ago, right? That your default, your default readers, the people who are writing for it's technically not me. It's default college, freshman student audience, right? So if you have a thesis, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but if we have a thesis like Coca-Cola appeals to middle-aged men or something like that, then it's like, okay, well, you got to keep in mind your college freshman student audience. Not all of them know what it's like to be a middle-aged man. Most of them probably don't know what it's like to be a middle-aged man. So this is your opportunity to get a little bit more into the demographics. Specifically, what does this group care about? And what is this group scared about? And I know that's a weirdly specific thing. Why am I telling you to maybe get into that? Well, basically, most commercials, if the marketers know what they're doing, they know a lot about their own demographic going in, that their target audience, right? So they know what this group cares about, and they know what this group is scared about, and they use that to try to sell stuff. Every beer ad, ever, it feels like, it was like a young man, because it's almost always young men as their target audience. Young man is bored in his apartment, then he opens a beer, and all of a sudden he's partying. What are they actually doing there? They're capitalizing on the, an actual, go do the research, actual fear. Young men fear being alone. I'm reading these breathless articles lately, loneliness epidemic among young men, all this fun stuff. And so it's like they know that's a fear. So in the commercials, they play on that fear. Because you might hear me say this in some future videos. I know I torment my face-to-face students with it a lot, but most commercials, they're trying to sell you a product. So they try to position the product as a solution. Well, I can't sell you a solution if you don't think you have a problem. So there's always capitalizing on fears. Think about every makeup ad you've ever seen, right? Where they'll have this, coded phrasing, this nice, reassuring voice. Like, we're here to bring out the best you. It's like, okay, that sounds nice. Who doesn't want to be their best? But what are they actually saying there? You currently, this is not your best. It's like the old pickup artist thing. They're negging the audience. They got to make them feel a little bad. So I guess I go need to get that beauty product after all. All right. And then finally, we get to the thesis, which I already mentioned. Compared to the first essay, the thesis is kind of straightforward. It's basically company X is appealing to audience Y. And, you can phrase that however you want, but what do you call it? Audience Y has to have at least two criteria, right? So what I mean by that, I gave an example a minute ago where it's like Coca-Cola appeals to middle-aged men. And so it's like, you can't just say Coca-Cola appeals to men. It's like half the planet? Probably not. You can't just say Coca-Cola appeals to middle-aged people, like all middle-aged people everywhere. It's a little broad. So instead, like, middle-aged men, there's at least two criteria there. And by now, you should have feedback, of course, on your outlines. I want you to reach out if you have any questions about, how do I structure the thesis, or just general questions about the assignment. And that brings me to the end. Y'all know the deal. If you do have those questions, you can email me, you can text me, 863-835-2399. Y'all have a good one. Bye.